a fresh start. The most difficult issue here will be in getting a fresh start with the topic and looking with new eyes. People tend to have very strong impressions of who Jesus is, even if they are not Christians, and most often these impressions are not based on reading comprehension of canonical gospel Jesus in his own literary light. It is common enough to accidentally misapprehend a topic or on an issue from a pop cultural perspective. Have you ever heard the chorus of a song that you really liked and then investigated the full lyrics and found not only that the song is much more different than you would have guessed at the surface, but is actually the exact opposite of what you thought the song was about? For example, Born in the USA sounds like a quintessential patriotic song, but is actually a song critical of the U.S. for not taking care of its veterans returning from war. That certainly still fits the definition of patriotism that some people have, where criticism of one's country is necessary to building and maintaining its character, but that's not what most expect of the particulars of the song. It seems like most of the time when it is playing is ironically at Republican conventions, where expanding healthcare benefits for veterans is the last thing on their minds. The chorus is pretty much all that matters to establish what the song means for most audiences, but go read the lyrics with what I've said in mind, and you'll see it quite differently. The song American Woman by the Guess Who sounds patriotic as well, but is actually a metaphor for Canada not joining in with U.S. wars. Nonetheless, you'll find musical artist Lenny Kravitz, for example, turning it into a music video that is about being seduced by actress Heather Graham, presumably portraying an exemplar of an attractive American woman. However, unless the song is actually about Pepper Potts from Marvel's Iron Man, it's hard to figure out what the lyrics, "I don't need your war machines, I don't need your ghetto scenes," would mean in that context. Every Breath You Take, sung by Sting, is another example of a popularly misinterpreted song. Despite initial impressions, it is actually a really creepy stalker song about someone, after a breakup, who just can't let go. Superficially, it sounds like a romantic love song and is often listed as such, especially since there are no popular categories of music for stalker love songs. Go figure. This isn't just some clever reinterpretation from someone on the internet. Sting himself in interviews had this to say, quote, "I think the song is very, very sinister and ugly, and people have actually misinterpreted it as being a gentle little love song when it's quite the opposite." End quote. But it's not like Sting's own words are going to throw a wrench in the song's timeless popularity anytime soon. Sometimes culture just runs away with a superficial meaning, despite the explicit protestations of even the originator. If you are a romantic couple and Every Breath You Take is your song, you're probably not going to be too interested in what Sting himself here has to say about it. I'm sure a listener or watcher can adduce other examples from their own personal experience of pop culture songs that sound one way when you're listening to them on the radio and not really paying attention, but then turn out to be completely another way upon closer inspection when you get home and look up the lyrics on the internet, if that's something you're inclined to do. Similarly, most people have heard the nice bits from Jesus like "Love your neighbor as yourself," which for analogy's sake would be the chorus of the Jesus song, so to speak, from the Gospels that you remember well and strongly believe characterizes Jesus' teachings. Now, we're going to take a much closer, more comprehensive and coherent look at Jesus' quite disturbing fractured fairy tale world of the canonical Gospels. Surprise, you're not on the same moral page with a first century apocalyptic rabbi. The reality is that the character Jesus in the canonical Gospels was a cult leader who expected his disciples to disown family and all worldly ties, to be completely obedient to him like any other doomsday cultist waiting to be beamed up by the proverbial mothership. Every cult leader says at least some nice-sounding things up front, and if you stop there at what we might call the hallmark sentiments level, you might never have any idea why exactly joining their cult might be personally and morally problematic. Jesus endorsed the genocidal evils and prejudiced laws of the Old Testament, twisted the knife of Moses' laws even further, rolled the clock back on some points of moral progress in his culture, taught many psychologically abusive, superstitious, and extremist things, and as I will lay out in a future chapter or video here, he was only a pacifist in the sense of being a patient maniac who intended to return with an army of angels to eternally torture the vast majority of humanity for being imperfect by his highly prejudiced standards. Jesus was a peace-loving hippie, if one can be a vegan by virtue of not having gotten around to eating all of the animals yet. If any of this sounds shocking to you, it really shouldn't. But the topic is where it is at, culturally speaking, and so the rest of this video series is dedicated to getting into the details and breaking down each issue to demonstrate the point. I take the topic very seriously and have done my best over many years to make sure this book or video series will be worth the listener reader's while. Hopefully the contents are challenging and educational and will leave any honest, reasonable person who takes the time to ponder the issues unable to disagree with my general conclusions, or at the very least appreciate the reasons why someone would have such a polar opposite view of Jesus than what one might typically culturally expect.